The Sahara Desert is not a place. It is a planet. It is a landmass the size of the United States, but without water, without trees, and without mercy. The sun doesn't just shine there, it strikes. It hammers the ground with enough radiation to fry an egg on a rock in 30 seconds. During the day, the temperature hits 120 degrees Fahrenheit. At night, it drops to freezing. It is a landscape of extremes, a binary world, hot or cold, alive or dead. For thousands of years, humans avoided it. The Tuareg nomads, the blue men of the desert, cross it only because they know its secrets. They know where the wells are. They know how to read the wind. But in the late 20th century, a new kind of human began to arrive in the Sahara. They were not nomads. They were not traders. They were runners. They came to suffer. They came for the Marathon des Sables, the Marathon of the Sands. 6 days, 155 miles, self-supported. You carry your own food. You carry your own sleeping bag. You carry your own survival kit. If you collapse, a helicopter might come, or it might not. In April 1994, a man stood at the starting line in Morocco. He was 39 years old. He was handsome, fit, and confident. His name was Mauro Prosperi. He looked at the endless ocean of sand dunes and he smiled. He thought he was racing against other men. He didn't know that, within 4 days, he would be racing against God. Mauro Prosperi was not a normal jogger. He was a Sicilian, intense, passionate, hard. He was a police officer in the Polizia di Stato. But more than that, he was a modern pentathlete. The modern pentathlon is the most soldierly of all Olympic sports. It was designed to simulate the skills of a 19th century cavalry officer trapped behind enemy lines, fencing, swimming, show jumping, pistol shooting, running. To be a pentathlete, you have to be versatile. You have to be disciplined. Mauro had been to the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles. He was part of the gold medal winning team. He was an elite machine. But by 1994, the Olympics were behind him. He was retiring from professional competition. But an athlete doesn't just turn off the engine. The fire still burns. He needed a new challenge. He didn't want a sprint. He wanted a war. He heard about this race in Morocco, the toughest foot race on earth. It sounded perfect. It wasn't about speed. It was about endurance. It was about pain management. Mauro told his wife, Cinzia, "I'm going to run the desert." She looked at him. She knew better than to argue. Mauro was a man who, once he decided to do something, would walk through a brick wall to do it. Or, in this case, a wall of sand. The Marathon des Sables is unique because of one rule: self-sufficiency. In a normal marathon, there are aid stations every mile. People hand you Gatorade. People hand you orange slices. In the Sahara, nobody hands you anything except water. And the water is rationed, 9 liters a day. That's it. You have to carry everything else on your back. Mauro spent months agonizing over his backpack. It is a game of grams. Every ounce you carry is an ounce that will crush your knees on mile 100. He cut the handles off his toothbrush. He removed the labels from his clothes. He packed freeze-dried food, cubes of Parmesan cheese, dried ham. He packed a small stove, and the mandatory survival kit: a compass, a knife, a whistle, a mirror, and a flare gun. The flare gun was small, like a pen. It had one flare. Use only in extreme emergency, the rule book said. Mauro looked at the flare. It looked like a toy. He packed it at the bottom of his bag. "I won't need this," he thought. "I don't get lost." He was an officer. He was trained in navigation. He packed his running gear, lycra shorts, a white cap with a neck flap, like the French Foreign Legion, and sunglasses. He was ready. He felt like a gladiator entering the Colosseum. He arrived in Ouarzazate, Morocco, the gateway to the desert. He met the other runners. There were about 130 of them, French, Italian, American, Japanese. They were a strange tribe. Ultra runners are not like other athletes. They are quieter, introspective. They are running away from something or running towards something that they can't explain in words. There was a camaraderie instantly. They compared backpacks. How heavy is yours? 10 kilos. Too heavy. You'll die. Mauro joined the Italian team. They were loud, boisterous, confident. They joked about the French runners. The French think they own the desert because they colonized it. We will show them Sicilian steel. They took a truck ride deep into the dunes. The road ended. The sand began. They set up the bivouac, a circle of black Berber tents. They slept on the ground. Mauro looked up at the sky. The stars in the desert are not like the stars in the city. They are aggressive. They are so bright they cast shadows. He felt small. For the first time, a flicker of doubt entered his mind. "This place is big," he whispered to his teammate. "It is an ocean without water." Day 1. The starting line. The race director, Patrick Bauer, stood on a Land Rover. He played Highway to Hell by AC/DC over the loudspeakers. It was the tradition. The runners cheered, they danced, the gun fired, the herd moved. The first stage was easy. 18 miles. Mauro ran strong. He felt good. His legs were pistons. He navigated the rocky plateaus, Hamada, and the soft dunes, ARG. Running on sand is like running in a nightmare. You take 2 steps forward, you slide 1 step back. It destroys your calves. But Mauro was a pentathlete. He was used to suffering. He finished the first day in the top tier. He sat by the fire that night, eating his freeze-dried pasta. He felt like a king. This is manageable, he thought. It is just running, just heat. He didn't know that the desert was just toying with him. It was luring him in. It was letting him get deep enough so that when the trap snapped, there would be no escape. Day 2 and Day 3 passed. Mauro was flying. He was in 4th place. He was beating the specialists. He was running with the leaders, the Moroccan runners. The Moroccans were ghosts. They didn't run. They glided over the sand. Mauro tried to keep up. He was competitive. He wanted to win. He pushed himself. He drank his water ration, but he was always thirsty. The air was so dry that sweat evaporated before it touched the skin. You don't feel wet, you just feel crusted with salt. By the end of Day 3, he was deep in the Sahara. Civilization was hundreds of miles away. The landscape was changing. The dunes were getting bigger. The Erg Chebi, the highest dunes in Morocco. They rose like mountains of gold dust, 500 feet high. To climb them, you had to crawl on your hands and knees. Mauro reached the bivouac on Day 3 exhausted but happy. He called it the happiest night. He joked with his friends. "Tomorrow is the long stage," they said. 50 miles, non-stop. "Tomorrow we separate the men from the boys." Mauro slept soundly. He dreamed of ice cream. Day 4, April 14th, 1994. The turning point, the long stage. They started early to beat the heat. Mauro felt a change in the air. Usually, the morning air was crisp and still. Today, it was heavy, static. The sky wasn't blue. It was a milky white. The Tuareg guides looked at the horizon. They were chattering nervously. They wrapped their shimags, scarves, tighter around their faces. Mauro didn't speak Tuareg. He didn't know what they were saying. They were saying, Sirocco, the warm wind from the south, the wind that brings the sand. The race started. Mauro took off. He was alone for long stretches. The field had spread out over miles. He reached the first checkpoint. He refilled his water bottles. He kept running. Around 1 p.m., the wind picked up. At first, it was refreshing, a breeze to cool the sweat. Then, it started to sting. Grains of sand hitting his legs like needles. He put on his goggles. He looked up. A wall was coming. It wasn't a cloud. It was a solid curtain of yellow earth stretching from the ground to the sky. It was moving at 50 miles per hour. Mauro stopped. He looked back. The runner behind him was gone, swallowed by the dust. He looked forward. The trail marker was gone. He checked his compass. "Keep going," he told himself. "It will pass." He stepped into the wall, and the world disappeared. April 14th, 1994, 1:30 p.m. The sandstorm hit with the force of a physical blow. Mauro Prosperi was no longer running on Earth. He was running inside a blender. The wind was howling so loud he couldn't hear his own footsteps. The sand was everywhere. In his eyes, his nose, his mouth. He wrapped a scarf around his face, but the dust was microscopic. It filled his lungs. He stopped running. He knew the protocol. If you get lost in a storm, stop. Wait for it to pass. He looked for a marker. The race organizers place small piles of stones or flags every 500 meters. He couldn't see anything. Visibility was zero. He sat down. He huddled behind a small bush, trying to shield himself from the stinging sand. He waited. An hour passed. The storm didn't stop. It got worse. It was a yellow wind, a massive cyclonic event that can last for days. Mauro started to worry about one thing: being buried. The sand was piling up against his legs. If he stayed sitting, he would be covered. He stood up. He decided to keep moving. "I just need to find a shelter," he thought. A ruin, a tree, anything. It was a fatal mistake. Without a visual reference, a human being cannot walk in a straight line. We walk in circles. Mauro walked for 8 hours. He thought he was moving toward the finish line. In reality, the wind had shifted. He was running west, toward Algeria, toward the deepest, emptiest part of the Sahara. Night fell. The darkness didn't help. It just turned the yellow void into a black void. The wind finally died down around midnight. The silence returned. Mauro stopped. He was exhausted. He dug a hole in a sand dune to sleep. He crawled into his sleeping bag. He checked his water. He had half a bottle left. He wasn't worried yet. Tomorrow morning, he thought, I will see the race markers. I will see the helicopter. I will rejoin the pack. He assumed the race organizers would pause the race. He assumed they were looking for him right now. He didn't know that the storm had scattered everyone. The organizers were in chaos. They were trying to find dozens of missing runners. Mauro was just one needle in a very large haystack. He slept. It was the last peaceful sleep he would have for 10 days. Day 5. Sunrise. Mauro woke up. The air was clear. The sky was a brilliant, cruel blue. He climbed to the top of the highest dune. He scanned the horizon. He expected to see the colorful lycra of other runners. He expected to see the white Land Rovers of the organization. He saw nothing. 360 degrees of sand. No footprints. The storm had erased them. No flags. No mountains he recognized. "Okay," he said aloud. "Don't panic. You are a police officer. You are an Olympian. Solve the problem." He took out his compass. He knew the race generally headed southeast. So, if he walked north, he should cut across the course, right? It was a logical deduction, but it was wrong. Because he had run so far west during the storm, walking north was just taking him parallel to the course, but miles away from it. He started walking. He walked all day. He ran when he could. He kept looking at the sky, waiting for the helicopter. Around noon, he heard it. Thwack, thwack, thwack. A helicopter. It was searching. It was flying low. Mauro ripped the flare gun out of his bag. He loaded the single flare. He waited until the helicopter was close. He fired. Whoosh! The small red star shot up into the sky. Mauro waved his arms. Here, here. The helicopter kept flying. It didn't turn. Why? Because the sun was so bright, the flare was invisible, and Mauro, dressed in his sand-colored running gear, blended perfectly into the dunes. The pilot looked right at him and saw only sand. The helicopter faded into the distance. Mauro stood there, his arms still raised. The silence rushed back in. That was the moment the fear truly arrived. He realized he was invisible. Day 6. He had been moving for 2 days with almost no water. He was hallucinating. He saw lakes. He saw his wife. Then he saw a building. A small white dome structure in the middle of nowhere. A marabou. A shrine to a Muslim saint. These shrines are scattered across the desert. They are holy places for nomads. Mauro ran toward it. People, he thought. Water. He reached the shrine. It was empty. Just a stone tomb inside. No well. No water. But it was shade. He crawled inside. It was cool. He collapsed on the floor. He looked up. High in the corner of the shrine, hanging from the wooden beams, were bats. Hundreds of bats. They were sleeping. Mauro stared at them. His thirst was a physical agony. His throat felt like it was stuffed with cotton. He needed fluid. Any fluid. He looked at the bats. He didn't see animals. He saw juice boxes. It was a primal switch. The civilized man turned off. The predator turned on. He grabbed a handful of sand. He threw it at the ceiling. The bats woke up. They fluttered in panic. Mauro grabbed his knife. He slashed at the air. He knocked some of them down. He grabbed a bat. It screeched. It bit his hand. He cut its head off. He squeezed the small, furry body over his mouth. A few drops of warm blood trickled onto his tongue. It tasted metallic, foul, but it was wet. He ate the raw meat. He ate the intestines. He ate 20 bats that day. He smeared the blood on his lips to keep them from cracking. He sat in the holy shrine, covered in bat blood, waiting to die. Day 7. The helicopter didn't come back. Mauro was weak. He realized he wasn't going to be found. He thought about his death. He thought about his family. In Italy, if a soldier goes missing and is declared presumed dead, his family has to wait 10 years to get the pension. But if the body is found, the pension is immediate. Mauro loved his family more than his life. He decided he had to die where he could be found. The shrine was a landmark. If he died here, eventually, a nomad would find his body. If he walked into the dunes and died, he would be buried forever. So, he decided to end it here. He took a piece of charcoal from an old fire in the shrine. He wrote a note on the wall. I am Mauro Prosperi. Tell my wife I love her. I tried to survive. He took his small knife. He sat against the wall. He cut his left wrist. The blood flowed. He closed his eyes. He waited for the darkness. He waited to drift away. But the desert had one final cruelty. Mauro was so dehydrated that his blood was thick like syrup. It clotted instantly. The wound stopped bleeding. He woke up the next morning. He was still alive. He looked at his wrist. A scab had formed. He laughed. A dry, rasping laugh. I cannot even kill myself, he whispered. The desert wants me to suffer more. He stood up. He took it as a sign. If I cannot die, he said, then I must walk. I will walk until I drop. He packed his bag. He left the shrine of the bats. He walked into the infinite. He walked for days. He had a new strategy. Head toward the clouds. He saw clouds on the horizon every morning. Clouds mean mountains. Mountains mean water. Or people. He walked toward the mirage. He ate anything he found. Beetles, lizards, snakes. He caught a snake, crushed its head with a rock, and ate it raw. He sucked the liquid from the roots of desert plants. He drank his own urine. He learned quickly that you can only do this once or twice. After that, the toxins become too concentrated and it poisons you. One day, he saw footprints. Fresh footprints. He followed them for hours, his heart pounding with hope. Then he realized they were his footprints. He had walked in a giant circle. He screamed at the sky. But then he saw something real. A set of tracks, not human. Camels. And not just camel tracks. Camel dung. It was dry, but it was proof. Tuareg nomads had passed here. He followed the camel tracks. They led him to a small oasis, a puddle of muddy water. Mauro threw himself into the mud. He drank. It was full of camel urine and sand, but he drank gallons of it. His stomach cramped. He vomited. He drank again. He filled his bottle with the brown sludge. He felt a surge of energy. He wasn't dead yet. He looked at the horizon. He saw something green. A palm tree? Or just another trick of the light? Day 8. Mauro Prosperi was no longer in Morocco. He didn't know it, but he had walked across an invisible line in the sand. He was now in Algeria. This was dangerous for two reasons. First, the terrain in Algeria is even more desolate than in Morocco. It is the empty quarter of the Maghreb. Second, Algeria in 1994 was in the middle of a brutal civil war. The border zone was a military exclusion zone. It was filled with rebels, terrorists, and nervous soldiers with itchy trigger fingers. Mauro was walking through a war zone dressed in bright lycra, but he didn't care about politics. He cared about the mountains. He kept walking toward the Jebel, mountains he saw in the distance. He developed a rhythm: walk at dawn, rest at noon, walk at dusk. He was a robot. His body had consumed all its fat reserves. Now it was consuming muscle. His liver was failing. His eyes were yellow. He weighed 16 kilos, 35 pounds, less than when he started. He was a skeleton wrapped in sunburned skin. To keep the engine running, he became a hunter-gatherer. He saw a lizard scuttling across the sand. In his former life, Mauro was an animal lover. Now, he was a predator. He pounced. He grabbed the lizard by the tail. He didn't cook it. He didn't have fire. He bit the head off. He chewed the raw flesh. It was rubbery and tasted of musk, but it was protein. He found beetle larvae under rocks. He ate them. He found dried roots. He chewed them for moisture. He was reverting to a pre-human state. His mind was surprisingly clear. The hallucinations had stopped. Now, there was only a cold, hard focus. Put one foot in front of the other. Do not stop. If you stop, the vultures will come. And they were there. High above, circling in the thermal currents, black birds watched him. They were waiting for him to stumble. Mauro looked up and shouted at them. "Not today," he rasped. "Not today." Day 9, April 23rd, 1994. The sun was at its zenith. Mauro was walking through a dry riverbed, wadi. He looked up. He saw a figure, a human figure, a young girl, maybe 10 years old. She was tending a small flock of goats near a well. Mauro stopped. He thought it was another hallucination. He rubbed his eyes. The girl didn't disappear. She was real. He tried to run toward her, but he looked terrifying. He was covered in dirt and dried blood. His beard was wild. His eyes were sunken. He was wearing tattered, colorful rags. He looked like a jinn, a desert demon. The girl saw him. Her eyes went wide with terror. She screamed. She turned and ran. She abandoned her goats and sprinted toward the horizon. Mauro tried to shout, "Help! I am human!" But his voice was a croak. He collapsed by the well. He couldn't pull the water up. He didn't have a bucket and the rope was gone. But he knew something important. The girl wasn't alone. She was running to somewhere. She was running to a camp. Mauro gathered his last ounce of strength. He followed the girl's footprints. He walked over a dune, and there it was. A nomad camp. Black tents made of camel hair, camels resting in the shade. Mauro stumbled into the center of the camp. The girl had warned the women. Several Tuareg women came out of the tents. The men were gone, probably trading in the city or tending distant herds. The women looked at this strange creature. They didn't run. Desert hospitality is a sacred law. Even if a demon comes to your tent, you must feed him. They saw he was dying of thirst. They didn't give him water. Water can kill a deeply dehydrated person if they drink too fast. They gave him goat's milk, warm, fresh milk. They poured a little into a bowl. Mauro drank it. It was the best thing he had ever tasted. It was rich, fatty, and sweet. He drank more. Then he vomited. His stomach had shrunk to the size of a walnut. The women were patient. They gave him a little more. They laid him down on a rug in the shade. They didn't speak his language, Italian/French. They spoke Tamashek, but they understood suffering. They cleaned his wounds. Mauro looked at their faces, their indigo veils. He realized he was safe. He closed his eyes and slept for the first time in 10 days without fear of the vultures. He woke up to the sound of an engine, a jeep. The Tuareg women had sent a runner to the nearest military outpost. Soldiers jumped out of the jeep. They were wearing green uniforms. They were Algerian military police, gendarmerie. They had guns, Kalashnikovs. They approached Mauro cautiously. They didn't see a marathon runner. They saw a suspicious man in the border zone during a civil war. Was he a spy? A mercenary? A terrorist? They handcuffed him? No, he was too weak. But they treated him like a prisoner. They put him in the back of the jeep. They drove him across the desert. The ride was bumpy and brutal. Mauro didn't care. He was in a car. A car meant civilization. They took him to a military base in Tindouf. They sat him in a chair. An officer interrogated him. "Who are you? Where is your passport?" Mauro pointed to his race bib. "Marathon," he whispered. "Morocco." The officer laughed. "Morocco? You're in Algeria, my friend. You're 290 kilometers, 180 miles off course." The room went silent. The officer looked at the map. He looked at Mauro. If this man was telling the truth, he had just walked nearly 300 kilometers across the worst desert in the world. The suspicion turned to awe. "Get the doctor," the officer ordered. They took him to the infirmary. They hooked him up to an IV drip, saline solution. Mauro felt the cold fluid entering his veins. It felt like life returning. He asked for a mirror. The nurse hesitated. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Yes." She handed him a small hand mirror. Mauro looked at himself. He gasped. He didn't recognize the man in the glass. His face was black from the sun. His lips were cracked and bleeding. His eyes were wild, staring out of deep black sockets. He looked 70 years old. He touched his face. "I am a monster," he thought. But then he saw something else. In the depths of those wild eyes, there was a fire. He had survived. The police contacted the Italian embassy. The embassy contacted his wife, Cinzia. "We found him," they said. "He is alive." Cinzia collapsed. She had already planned the funeral. The news spread. The Robinson Crusoe of the Sahara had returned. He stayed in the Algerian hospital for a few days. His body was a wreck. His liver was damaged. His kidneys were on the verge of failure. He had lost 30% of his body mass, but his appetite returned with a vengeance. The doctors told him to eat light food, soup, rice. Mauro ignored them. He was starving. He asked for everything: bread, meat, cheese. He ate like a wolf. His body absorbed everything. He realized that the hunger wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. He had been emptied out. Now he needed to be filled. But amidst the joy of survival, a dark thought entered his mind. Why did I survive? Why me? He remembered the bats, the urine, the suicide attempt. He felt a strange guilt. He had seen the edge of existence. How do you go back to paying taxes and driving a car after that? May 1994. Fiumicino Airport, Rome. The sliding doors opened. Mauro Prosperi walked out. He was in a wheelchair, pushed by an airline attendant. He looked like a famine victim. He had lost 16 kilograms, 35 pounds. His liver was swollen. His eyes were still yellow from jaundice. But he was alive. A crowd was waiting. Reporters, photographers, police colleagues, and Cinzia, his wife. She broke through the barrier. She threw her arms around his neck. She felt his ribs through his shirt. He felt fragile, like a bird. I told you, Mauro whispered in her ear. I told you I would come back. The cameras flashed. Click, click, click. It was the same sound as the shutter in his mind. For 10 days, he had heard only the wind. Now, the noise of Rome was deafening. He smiled for the cameras, but his eyes were distant. He was physically in Italy, but mentally, he was still sitting in the Bat Shrine. The hero's welcome didn't last long. Survival stories always follow a pattern. First awe, then doubt. The media started asking questions. How did a man survive 10 days without water? How did he cross 300 kilometers? Did he cheat? Some newspapers suggested he had flagged down a Tuareg truck, ridden for miles, and then jumped out near the finish line to claim glory. They called him a fraud. He looks too good, one reporter wrote. If he drank his own urine, why isn't he dead? Mauro was furious. He was a police officer, a man of honor. Look at my blood, he shouted in interviews. My blood is thick like oil. My kidneys are ruined. Is this a trick? The race organizers defended him. The doctors defended him. This is not a trick, the doctors said. This is a physiological miracle. His body went into a hibernation state. His metabolism slowed down to preserve moisture. Gradually, the skeptics went silent. But the accusation hurt Mauro more than the thirst. He had conquered death, only to be judged by men sitting in air-conditioned offices. Back in his apartment in Sicily, the race was over. The cameras were gone. Now came the hard part, recovery. His body was confused. For weeks, he couldn't eat solid food properly. His stomach would cramp. He had to eat baby food, mush, soups. But his brain was screaming, eat, eat, eat. Cinzia would wake up in the middle of the night. Mauro wasn't in bed. She would find him in the kitchen, sitting on the floor, in the dark, surrounded by open fierce, eating bread, eating cheese, eating raw pasta. He was like a stray dog that had been starved. He started hoarding food. He would hide crackers under the mattress. He would put bottles of water in every room of the house. If he walked into a room and didn't see a water bottle, he would have a panic attack. He would turn on the tap in the bathroom and just watch the water run. "It is gold," he would say. "Liquid gold." He would cry watching it go down the drain. "We waste so much," he told Cinzia. "We are fools." Mauro went back to work. He put on his police uniform. He sat at his desk. He looked at the paperwork. Reports on traffic accidents. Reports on petty thefts. It all seemed so trivial. Who cares about a parking ticket, he thought. I have eaten bats. I have drunk blood. He felt alienated. He would look at his colleagues complaining about the coffee machine being broken. He wanted to shake them. You don't know what suffering is. He became a ghost in his own life. He went to parties, but he didn't talk. He felt a wall between him and normal people. Only other survivors understood. He received letters from mountaineers who had been trapped in storms, from sailors who had been lost at sea. They wrote, "Welcome to the club. The world will never look the same again." Mauro realized they were right. The desert hadn't just taken his weight. It had taken his soul, and it hadn't given it back. 6 months passed. Mauro was physically healed. He gained the weight back. He started running again. Everyone expected him to retire from extreme sports. "You survived the worst," they said. "Now play golf." But Mauro felt a strange pull. He would look at the map of Africa on his wall. He would touch the spot where he got lost. He didn't feel fear. He felt homesickness. This is the paradox of the survivor. The place that almost killed you becomes the only place where you feel truly alive. In the desert, life was simple. Find shade, find water, survive. In the city, life was complicated. Taxes, politics, gossip. He missed the simplicity. He missed the silence. One night he turned to Cinzia. "I have to go back," he said. She looked at him with horror. "Go back where?" "To the Sahara. To finish the race." 3 years after the disaster, the conversation in the Prosperi household was not a debate. It was a plea. Cinzia looked at her husband. He was healthy again. He was training again. But he had that look in his eyes, the 1,000-yard stare. "I have to go back," Mauro said. "Why?" Cinzia asked. "Why tempt fate? You survived a miracle. Do not ask God for a second one." "It's not about fate," Mauro said. "It's about the circle. I left it open. I have to close it. If I don't go back, the desert wins. I will be the victim forever. I want to be the finisher." Cinzia cried. She shouted. She threatened to leave. But deep down, she knew she couldn't stop him. He was a pentathlete, a man of discipline. But he was also a Sicilian, a man of pride. To leave a battle unfinished was a stain on his honor. Finally, she relented. "Go," she said, "but take a bigger flare gun." Mauro laughed. He signed up for the 1998 Marathon des Sables. He packed his bag. This time, he packed extra batteries. He packed a better compass. And he packed a promise. "I will not get lost." April 1998. Ouarzazate, Morocco. Mauro Prosperi stood at the starting line. The scene was identical to 1994. The music, Highway to Hell. The smell of deep heat rub and nervous sweat. The crowd of runners. But when the announcer called his name, the crowd went silent. Mauro Prosperi, they looked at him with awe and fear. He was the ghost, the man who came back from the dead. Some runners touched him for luck. Others stayed away, as if his bad luck was contagious. Patrick Bauer, the race director, hugged him. "Mauro," Patrick said, "please, stay on the marked path." Mauro nodded. "Don't worry, Patrick. I know the way now." The gun fired. The herd moved. Mauro ran. But it wasn't the same running as before. In 1994, he ran with arrogance. He ran to win. In 1998, he ran with humility. He ran to survive. He watched every marker. He checked his compass every 10 minutes. He was running with a ghost beside him, the ghost of the man he used to be. Day 3, the long stage. The same stage where he got lost. The weather was clear, no storm, but the mind plays tricks. Around 1 p.m., the exact time the storm had hit in '94, Mauro felt a breeze. Just a gentle gust of wind lifting the sand. He froze. His heart hammered against his ribs, 180 beats per minute. Panic. He looked at the horizon. Was it coming back? Was the yellow wall returning? He started to hyperventilate. The PTSD kicked in. He saw the shrine. He tasted the bat blood. He felt the knife on his wrist. He fell to his knees in the sand. "Not again. Please, not again." A fellow runner stopped. "Are you okay?" Mauro looked at the runner. A stranger. A human being. Yes, Mauro gasped. Just memories. He stood up. He drank some water. He realized the sky was still blue. He forced himself to take a step, then another. He realized that the monster wasn't the wind. The monster was inside his head, and the only way to kill it was to keep moving. Day 6, the final stage. The finish line was in sight. A banner in the dunes, crowds cheering. Mauro Prosperi ran the last kilometer with tears streaming down his face. His salt-crusted face cracked with emotion. He crossed the line. He didn't raise his hands in victory like an Olympian. He collapsed. He fell face down into the sand. The medics ran to him. Mauro, Mauro! They thought he had fainted, but he wasn't fainting. He was kissing the ground. He grabbed a handful of sand, the same sand that had tried to bury him, and he kissed it. It was an act of forgiveness. He forgave the desert. He forgave the wind. And most importantly, he forgave himself. Patrick Bauer placed the heavy medal around his neck. You did it, Mauro. You closed the circle. Mauro held the medal. It felt heavier than his Olympic gold, because the gold was for skill. This medal was for life. He went home to Cinzia. He showed her the medal. It is done, he said. She breathed a sigh of relief. Good. Now you can retire. Now we can be normal. Mauro smiled, but he didn't answer, because he knew the truth. It wasn't done. The desert is a drug. The silence, the purity, the suffering. It clears the mind like nothing else. Once you have tasted the edge, the center feels boring. Mauro went back to work as a policeman, but every year when April came, he felt the itch. He started looking at other races. There is a race in the Gobi Desert, he told Cinzia one night. There is a race in Antarctica. Cinzia put her head in her hands. She realized that the Mauro who went into the storm in 1994 died there. The man who came back was a nomad. He would spend the rest of his life chasing the horizon. You would think that eating bats and drinking urine would be enough suffering for one lifetime. But Mauro Prosperi is not built like other men. He is an adrenaline junkie of the highest order. After conquering the Sahara in 1998, he didn't stop. He ran the Marathon des Sables 8 more times. He ran across the scorching lava fields of volcanoes. He ran 7,000 kilometers around the coast of Italy. But the universe wasn't done testing him. Years later, while kayaking solo around the island of Sicily, a wave capped his boat. He was thrown into the water. He was bitten? No, he was battered. He spent hours adrift, clinging to the hull, fighting the sea just as he had fought the sand. He survived that too. He is like a cat with 9 lives. But each survival stripped away a layer of his fear. He walks through the world with the calm confidence of a man who knows exactly what he is made of. Most of us hope we are brave. Mauro knows he is unbreakable. He is now an old man. His hair is white. His face is lined like a topographical map. But he still goes back to the desert. He doesn't run to win anymore. He runs to remember. He visits the Tuareg. They call him the Prince of the Desert. It is a title of respect. They know that he survived where even camels die. He sometimes visits the shrine, the marabou where he ate the bats. He stands inside the cool, dark room. He looks up at the ceiling. The bats are still there, hanging, sleeping. He doesn't kill them anymore. He thanks them. You gave your life for mine, he whispers. We are blood brothers. It is a strange communion. A Catholic Italian man and a colony of desert bats, bound together by the brutal logic of survival. Mauro's life is a lesson in minimalism. He lives simply. He doesn't care about luxury cars or designer clothes. He cares about water. He teaches young people now. He tells them his story. But he doesn't talk about the medals. He talks about the thirst. You do not know the taste of water, he tells them. You drink, but you do not taste. Only when you have been dry for 4 days, when your tongue is a piece of wood, only then do you understand. Water is God. He tries to teach them that we are fragile, that our civilization is just a thin veneer over the animal inside. Strip away the iPhone, he says. Strip away the air conditioning. And what are you? Are you a victim? Or are you a survivor? Mauro Prosperi went into the Sahara as a runner. He came out as a human being. His story is terrifying, yes. The bats, the suicide attempt, the blood. But it is also beautiful. It reveals the hidden superpower that lies dormant in all of us, the will to live. We think we are weak. We complain when the Wi-Fi is slow. We panic when we skip lunch. But Mauro proves that we are designed to endure the impossible. Our bodies are miracles of engineering. Our minds are fortresses of resolve. He lost 40 pounds. He lost his way. He lost his mind. But he kept his feet moving. And that is the only secret. When the storm hits, when the world turns yellow and the path disappears, do not sit down. Do not wait for the helicopter. Stand up, pick a cloud, and walk.